Did you know that fentanyl is a drug that is causing a major crisis in our communities? Stay tuned, and we will help you to understand why as we explore this dangerous drug.
Welcome to the Facing the Fentanyl Crisis program. My name is Dr. Jennifer Sankey, and I'm the Director of Health and Disabilities at the Southeastern Conference. Joining me today is Pastor Lucious Hall. He is the Director of Publishing and Family Education Program. Welcome, Pastor Hall.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sankey, for being here. I am concerned also about the fentanyl crisis that we are facing in our society and in our community, in our churches as well. It's affecting both the young and the old.
So the purpose of this program and this conversation today, Pastor Hall, really is to talk about how to prevent the use of even fentanyl. And there are people who are using it, so we want to be able to help connect them to resources, recovery, treatment, because we believe that is possible. And even how do we have access to recovery or rescue medications if someone has an overdose. So this program is really important because we do know of people who may be struggling with fentanyl or any other type of addiction.
Yeah, and all of those questions that you raised, Dr. Sankey, are excellent questions. But before we get into those questions, I'd like to say to those that are listening today that we want to put a disclaimer out there. First of all, we're not medical doctors.
That's right.
We don't even play doctors on TV.
Yes.
But the purpose of this program is educational, this platform. So we will be talking about a number of different things, but make sure that if there are issues, if you have a family member that has a problem with what we're going to be talking about today, any kind of drug addiction, please make sure that you see a medical doctor, a counselor, or someone that's in a position of responsibility that can address this problem. So we want to put that out here, first of all, as a disclaimer.
Absolutely. We do know that you're going to benefit from what we talk about today.
Absolutely.
There may be parents and grandparents, even teachers, church leaders, members, and we want to make sure that we provide adequate information about this topic of fentanyl because it is dangerous, as you mentioned, and we are seeing that it is on the rise. The thing about fentanyl, what's interesting to me, Pastor Hall, is there's two types of fentanyls. There's a pharmacological, meaning they actually have it in a laboratory that they prepare. And then there's also the street drug fentanyl. Now, years ago, I worked in surgery, and they used fentanyl to help, keep people asleep while they were having the surgical procedure. But the fentanyl we're talking about today is on the streets of Orlando, America, all across many states, that we need to have an awareness of how dangerous it is. And so that's why we're having the conversation.
So, Doc, what you're really saying is that fentanyl is and can be, well, first of all, it is a very dangerous drug, but it doesn't have to be a dangerous drug. When it's properly used, as you mentioned, under those who are able to supervise this drug, like in surgery, or to alleviate severe pain, it can be a drug that can be helpful. But as you mentioned, there are two kinds of fentanyl, and so especially the illegal fentanyl can be something that is very dangerous. Fentanyl is a powerful synthetic opioid that can be used, as we stated earlier, in surgery or for the treatment of severe pain. But where we run into problem oftentimes is the illegal fentanyl that can be created in laboratories that we find on our streets. And in very small doses, it can be something that can be very dangerous. And that is why we're seeing so many deaths that's resulting from fentanyl, because it only takes a very small amount that can actually lead to death.
In my research, what I found is that the tip of a pencil, you know how sharp that pencil lead can be, just a small dose of that powdered fentanyl can actually be deadly. So the pills of the ones that have been legalized and those are illegal, they look so much alike that people cannot differentiate between the two. And that's where the problem comes, because you're thinking you're taking one thing and it's actually something else. And it is actually 100 times, this fentanyl, 100 times stronger than morphine. Now, morphine, you give a little dose and you expect it to really help people relax or relieve the pain. But fentanyl being 100 times stronger, that means that the overdose is highly likely if someone gets their hands on something on the streets, that they can't differentiate between whether it is actually pharmaceutical or been laced with something else. So in teens, they're making it more attractive. Listen to this, Doc Hall. When I looked it up, they're making fentanyl in different colors. They call it rainbow fentanyl. And they've given it different colors to make it more attractive for youth, for teens to buy because of the colors. It's very attractive to them. So again, these suppliers are getting very creative in how they're getting individuals addicted to this medication or this drug.
That's amazing. I mean, I've heard of like fake money. You mean to tell me that there are even fake drugs out there that can actually lead to death? And we think about that. It's very serious because so many have died because they're thinking that maybe we're taking one thing, but in reality, it's these illegal drugs called fentanyl that's created in laboratories that you said in very small amounts can actually kill a person. That's amazing. But you know, Doc, I was thinking of something else that you just mentioned. I know that I've made visits and I've been by bedsides of those that were on morphine, but you're telling me that this drug is not 50 or 70 or 75% or 90%, but it is 100 times more powerful than morphine. That's amazing to me. It is amazing. It is a powerful drug. I don't think we can even begin to wrap our minds around how powerful this drug is that we're dealing with. And for those who are listening, can you imagine a drug that's 100 times more powerful than morphine, and yet you can put it in a small dosage, and one dosage can actually take a life, one pill. Think about that. Think about it.
Absolutely. And you know, we really want to increase your awareness about, even when the doctor, many times people go for dental procedures or surgery, and the fentanyl may be legally ordered in a prescription. But sometimes people, because of the way it makes you feel, it gives that feeling of euphoria, that feeling of pleasure. And so someone may start out innocently taking this medication for back pain or surgical pain for recovery or for a toothache or even for cancer. And because of the way it elevates the mood, makes you feel so good that they can become addicted to it. And I would caution all of us, if a doctor gives you any type of medication, make sure you secure it so no one else has access to it. Because sometimes in the homes we'll sit pills on the table, but there may be children there or teenagers there.
Absolutely.
And so you don't want to have it accessible, those opioids accessible to anyone that may try it, like it, and become addicted to it. So again, it's our responsibility to protect any prescribed medications that we may have, whether it's fentanyl or any other opioid.
Now, it's interesting. I want to focus on a word and underline a word that you used there, opioid. I know you have a medical background. I come from a theological perspective.
Yes.
But if I understand opioids correctly, it is within the family of medication that has to do with relieving pain, severe pain, and so forth. And it has to do with the receptors there that's able to block the pain and so forth. That's what makes this so addictive here. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing where, and from a theological perspective, the devil and his demonic forces have found ways to look at these human bodies of ours too, and see how God has made these amazing bodies, which are so unique, and find a way to still use destructive medications when not properly used to destroy these temples that God has put here on this earth.
I love that you brought about the spiritual aspect of this. This is a spiritual warfare. It really is, because we know in the Bible it says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers."
Absolutely.
So again, if our health is compromised because of an addiction to anything, or opioids or any other drug or any other thing, then we know that actually not only weakens our health and well-being, it weakens our spirituality. So this is a true spiritual warfare. When we say it's a public health crisis, it is a spiritual crisis also that is going on with the fentanyl crisis. And what I think about is many times people are trying to escape reality. They have mental pain, emotional pain. And so this medication, you may not have a physical pain, but if you have an emotional pain, and this makes you feel very euphoric and feel like you can escape reality, that is how people are drawn into this addiction. And as a result of that, they're at risk of overdose, they're at risk of death.
That's amazing. You know, you mentioned the word euphoria, and many times this drug is taken for a high. And when many get into this so-called high, it really takes the mind, what some believe, away from their problems. But the reality of it is, we must depend upon God to help us go through any of the challenges and anxieties and problems that we're facing, and not use drugs in order to kind of soothe any of our problems. We must depend upon God. So from a theological perspective, we look to God to help resolve problems, and we don't look to drugs. But fentanyl is a major challenge right now in our society. And we have to look at the fact that there's a high overdosage on this drug. And we have to look for ways now that we can kind of help, beginning with our children, to prevent them from dealing with the high overdose. I was looking at some things here, and one of the things clearly is we must look at education, and that's what we are doing. We've got to get into our churches. We've got to get into our school system, both our private schools as well as our public schools, and address how dangerous this drug can really be. We must look at all of the aspects that we're talking about here now to kind of help. So definitely one of the ways that we can help with some of the overdose, reduce that, is through education and through getting into our schools and looking at the prevention method as well. We also have to look at something else, and that is, what are the signs and what are the symptoms of a person that would be on this drug? We're going to be talking a little bit more about that as well, because we need to recognize some of the signs and some of the symptoms of one that would be on fentanyl as well. We also got to look at something else, a third area, and that is we've got to provide resources for those who are already hooked on this very dangerous drug. And we are here, Dr. Sankey, because in some ways, some of our family members have been impacted by this whole drug scenario, even if it's not fentanyl, because some of the other recreational drugs and sometimes lead one to wanting to get, let's say, a higher high, which ultimately can lead to fentanyl, which ultimately can lead to death. Unfortunately, more than a year ago, I lost a nephew, not to, I believe, fentanyl, but other drugs which led up to alcohol and some other different things. Alcohol is somehow tied into all of this as well, because it is a drug as well. It's legal, but it is still a drug. And so I lost a nephew. So this whole thing of drug addiction and prevention is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I believe it's something that we've got to champion from the church. The world should not have a stronger voice than we do when it comes to addressing some of these issues of addiction. And addiction is one of the issues now that the church, we must have a strong voice in our community.
Oh my, you know, Pastor Hall, you bring up a really good point. We want to have a conversation out loud because there is a stigma with drug use and abuse, whether it's alcohol or marijuana. There's so many controversial things, but unfortunately, people are suffering in silence. And so there may be parents and grandparents and teachers who may know of children who are struggling or who are actually at risk, a high risk of this. And so we want to talk more about that when we come back. We really want to talk about how do we recognize the signs and symptoms of someone who is using, whether it's fentanyl or any other drug, that could put them at risk of overdose, addiction, and possibly even death. So we will talk more about that when we come back from our break. Welcome back to Facing the Fentanyl Crisis. I'm here with my friend here, Pastor Hall, and I'm Dr. Jennifer Sankey Battles. And what we've been talking about is a very dear and near topic to our hearts about the importance of just increasing the awareness about the dangers of fentanyl. There's two types. There's the kind that is prescribed. There's fentanyl on the streets. But in this segment, we want to talk more in detail about what are some of the reasons that people become addicted, what are some of the signs and symptoms, and then really what is our role in helping those individuals get connected to treatment. So Doc Hall, let's start talking about this addiction problem again.
You know, Doc, addiction is a very complex scenario situation when you really think about it. In fact, one of the words I don't think that we use in our first segment is the word disease. Disease, dis-ease. It is a disease, and we sometimes don't like to think about addiction as a disease, but it is a disease. And it impacts a person not only mentally, but physically and spiritually as well. Think about that. A drug, this thing is so powerful that it impacts a person from the mental perspective, the physical perspective, as well as the spiritual dimension. And that's what the devil would like, because the devil wants to use anything he possibly can to keep a person away from God. And so when we get into addiction is very serious. It not only impacts that individual, but it has a tremendous impact upon the family as well. And perhaps that's maybe some things that you can share. How does this addiction problem, fentanyl and all the other drugs, impact the family? It's something to think about.
Yeah, those are really good questions. You know, and I think when we think about the fentanyl crisis, we have to kind of roll it back and say, what leads people to on that pathway? You know, what kind of, you know, sometimes they'll say, well, they have genetic predisposition, their mother or their father were maybe users of some type of alcohol or some type of a drug, and as a result, they saw the effects and they began to use it. So research does show there's some genetic predisposition for some individuals, but then environmental. You know, people are under high levels of stress. You know, high levels of stress. Sometimes they've gone through trauma, whether it's childhood trauma or adult trauma. And as we mentioned previously, they're trying to escape. They're trying to feel better. They don't want to deal with reality. And so we have to look at our environmental. And the reason I want to bring this up is because sometimes even in our homes or at jobs or different places, individuals are experiencing stressors, but they're not communicating that out. And so these are real issues with real people that they're dealing with. And sometimes it's even just the family dynamics. You know, it could be even that, you know, the youngest thinks that they're not getting the attention of the older child. Or it could be a child in the home who has a disability and they get all the attention, the other child does not. And so they go out seeking and looking for it. And I got to tell our parents and even everyone that sometimes we think we can control our home. How could someone use it in my home? Well, it could be from another family member. It could be from, they pick it up at school. It can even, you know, I heard that you can buy it online. There's so many ways to access this drug that even if you think your house is, you know, drug proof, that no one, that it can't get in there, it may not be, because individuals may just try it once, like it, and then continue to use it. So that's really important. But I do know that there are some facts about addiction that you may want to share with the people about why people begin to use it and how they feel once they start using it.
Yeah, good point there, Doc. People with addiction, first of all, find pleasure in the addiction, which they call escape. Okay. Like as you mentioned earlier, some maybe have a very stressful job, and so maybe on the weekend they just want to relax. sometimes you go to your doctor and they ask, do you drink, do you smoke, if they're a good doctor and they're doing their job. But they also ask, do you use recreational drugs? So some people use these drugs on the weekend, but that weekend becomes even now using them during the week. And in some cases, people end up getting high even on the job. And depending on the kind of job you have, it can be something very dangerous. But sometimes they use drugs as an escape from what we would call reality. People with addiction sometimes often feel isolated. That can be a feeling. Addiction for some is a lifelong struggle. Where they're one pill, one drink, or one sniff away from becoming addicted again. We mentioned earlier too that addiction is a disease. We don't often think about it like that, but it is a disease, a terrible disease. Addiction can happen at any stage in life, just because we've escaped it maybe when we were much younger or our middle years. Even senior citizens, those well up in age, are finding themselves now addicted to drugs. Sometimes it can happen when maybe you've had surgery and you're using painkillers and you become addicted to those painkillers and so forth as well. Adolescents, though, are more susceptible to addiction because we call it, I guess, peer pressure. And this is one of the things I think perhaps maybe that happened with my nephew, where he started using alcohol at a very early age. And my understanding is, because I was not home at the time, but that early use of alcohol and his association with other so-called friends that continued to lead to a deeper and deeper addiction of alcohol. And then that alcohol addiction then led to other more serious drugs. Dependency makes drugs feel like you're normal. In other words, you become sometime when you start using these drugs, you become so dependent upon it, it becomes something normal, like it's really no big deal. So again, alcohol and all of these other related drugs, it's a complex situation, but it is something that, again, the church needs to speak out on, because we sometimes turn a blind eye and say, well, we're Christians and we don't have that problem among those who are believers. And even if we don't have it in our immediate congregation, it is something that exists in the broader faith community, and it's something that the church needs to be prepared to deal with and give support in that area as much as possible.
So what you said is something very important. You are not alone.
Absolutely.
In this, we are in this together. That means that if you know someone, if you have a family member, a friend, cousin, whomever that is, that you are like, what do I do? Because honestly, it is pretty difficult to address individuals with addiction. They're feeling great, and if you address it, they may feel like, why are you trying to, rain on my party?
Absolutely.
Right. And so, but I do need to just kind of piggyback on what you were saying is, we need to know the signs and symptoms. We need to recognize when family members or friends are kind of secretive or sneaking around or stepping away often, from where there's a family event or your work desk and they're not visible. What is going on? If they kind of withdraw from family activities because they may feel like they're being rejected. And we really want to provide support to them along the way.
Absolutely.
Mood swings with addiction, if they're feeling high and happy and then they can't get to it for whatever reason, you may notice a drastic mood that they go into almost like a depression, or they go into an urgency that they must leave. I can't stay. I got to go. All of those are behaviors that we should pay attention to. And it does take a really delicacy to ask and to confront and to inquire, why there's such an urgency to leave. Why is there... Because sometimes they're just trying to get to that next fix. And we want to be sensitive to that. But we don't want to ignore that. Even ignoring their personal hygiene or ignoring responsibilities or paying the bills or things around the house. I think those are all things that we can't say they're irresponsible. It may be because of the result of them being involved and engaged in some type of activity with a drug, whether there's alcohol, that will do it as well. And so the most important thing is early recognition.
Absolutely.
and showing concern early, not watching it occur for days and weeks and years. And the further they get in, and you mentioned this, that they get one high, but they have to take twice the amount the next time to get a higher, because the effect changes every time.
Absolutely.
And so that early recognition of the signs and symptoms is critical, and also the early intervention. And I think that's where we want to make sure that we can provide you with resources of where to find help, find assistance, find professional counselors who can really help walk an individual through the process, because recovery is possible.
It is possible.
It's not once an addict, always an addict. They may have it in their mind, but having support to walk along the way can certainly help them to overcome.
And I'm so glad you mentioned support, because support is very critical. One support avenue is clearly finding help within the community, and that is from professionals that do this on a daily basis. I remember when my nephew, when we clearly understood that he had a very serious problem that could take his life, there was a retired nurse that was a part of our church family that moved very close to the community that I lived in as a child, and where my nephew was, and she became a very strong support with helping him to go and get any kind of support that he could possibly, get. Now, he resisted the help, but she still did her best to try to get him to resources like the City Rescue Mission. She took him there. That's always an area where you can go. In every major city, you're going to find a City Rescue Mission. And many of them have resources available to help those that are on drugs. They have a work program, and you get counseling while you're on that work program. She took him to a location of a City Rescue Mission that had a dynamic program, and he was able to talk with the director of that program and everything. But he was not ready, because again, this thing it has such a grip on you that he was just not ready. And even the director said to the retired nurse, he's not yet ready to come into this program until he hit rock bottom. Well, the problem is, rock bottom for him was his life. It was death, you see. And so this whole thing of fentanyl and all of these other drugs, many of them leading up to the taking or the use of fentanyl, it is a crisis. And when we use the word crisis, it is a crisis in our community. It's a crisis when you have a family member that's caught up in this stuff. For my nephew, he posed a crisis for the family, because there was pressure on my sister. There was pressure on his other siblings. There was pressure even on myself to try to find a way to help him get the help. It takes the family out of our normal routines would be one of the things that we look at. It causes financial challenges. And there are probably some of you out there listening now or viewing this. You have a family member that you know that's strung out on drugs, and they're always begging for money, and maybe they don't have a stable place to live, and maybe you go by a store or you see them on a street corner and they're begging. They are the shuttle. They're not grooming themselves properly. All of this is a part of this whole crisis scenario, but yet the church itself should provide an avenue to be able to help in cases like that, to support the family and to do their best to try to support one that's on drugs. I remember one of the churches that I pastored in the South Florida area, I will at least say that it was in South Florida, a person who had been strung out on drugs, who was literally sleeping under a bridge at one point in time, was able to get the support that she needed. She got herself together, and she came to me and she said, "Pastor, I would like to start a support group in our local congregation." And she started a support group which met once a week, every week. It was dynamic, and it brought people not only from the outside, but from within the community itself, or I should say from within the community of believers and the community outside of our congregation. And it was a tremendous support group that provided the support that was very much needed. And I believe that many of our churches must provide support groups, if not so much for your own members. You are a light in the community. And so from the community itself, we're going to always find that there's going to be a need, because this whole alcohol and drug addiction crisis, it is real, and it's not going away anytime soon. The only thing that's going to end this thing is going to be the coming of the Lord. But until that time, I believe the church must be a place that welcomes a support group that will give support to those who are facing this tremendous crisis of drug addiction.
I agree with you 100%. I do know that the North American Division has a Journey to Wholeness program, online training for individuals who are interested in helping to support individuals who are going through addiction. And so that is one avenue you can actually tap into, learn more about it, and be a great support system. But thank you so much, Pastor Hall, for sharing your passion and sharing your story about your nephew. It has to be, difficult to see a family member going through such an addiction and then not be able to recover fully. And so we want to say thank you to our audience. And next time you come to us, we will talk about the family. What really is the role of the family when it comes to addiction? Whether it's with fentanyl or any other type of addiction, how can you help them? How can you support them? And most importantly, how can you connect them to Christ? So even though we do have this fentanyl crisis, we as a church, we as a people want to connect individuals to Christ so that they can recover fully and experience the love and the joy and the grace of Christ. Until next time, thank you again. My name is Dr. Jennifer Sankey Battles, and thank you again, Pastor Hall.
Thank you for watching us. Join us for the next episode.